Hello and welcome to First Draft. This month we are talking about the books that have inspired us on our journey, and I have a special guest host with us this month. It is Laura Von Holt. She's waving at us right now. So we will go around the room and introduce ourselves and our drinks really fast, and then we will just dive right into this topic because it's going to be a fun and wild night, I have a feeling, because we're all chit-chatty and having fun. So let's start with Julia, since she's actually here on time tonight.
Here, guys.
She never gets to go first.
I know. But ironically, in being here on time, I don't have a drink with me, so you'll have to forgive me on that one. But yeah, I'm Julia Kelly. I write historical romance as well as contemporary romance, and I turned a book in today, so my life is good right now. Yeah, so I am punch drunk, if not actually drunk, on all of your wonderful, wonderful love right now. I don't know what I'm supposed to be talking about. I'm just going. I haven't been here for an intro in ages, so.
You did great. You did great. You should just sneak over to the kitchen real quick and get a drink, though.
I think I'm going to do that, actually.
Okay, do it. And co-hosting with me tonight is the ever awesome Mary Chris Escobar.
Wow, that's a tall order to live up to. Thanks. So I'm Mary Chris Escobar. I write women's fiction. I am drinking a giant glass, so it's actually big enough for me and Julia, of Belgian beer, and this is actually a home-brewed Belgian beer in a very special Duvel glass that's from Belgium. I mean, the beer is, the glass is from like a thrift store down the street for $1. But it's giant, and it's Belgian, and I have a Belgian double that my husband made. Yum. Cheers.
That is so cool. And then our very special guest, Laura.
Hello, world. My name is Laura Von Holt. I am a romance author, a creativity coach, a performer, and I just founded an app. So I'm really cool now, and I'm so cool that I'm drinking ginger hard cider in a pink cup.
Yes.
This is not the cocktail that I made earlier that I totally failed at. So I saved you.
About that cocktail, it was been glorious in individual ingredients, but disgusting.
It was like when you get in a food fight in the cafeteria, but then I drank it.
That's part of having.
Go simple. It's too early in the year to go hard.
The pink glass is nice, though. That's a good recovery there.
Thank you.
And the best part of having Laura with us tonight is as she just told us all, she is a real Renaissance woman, so she will be perfect for helping us figure out how to inspire all of you guys and finding the books that will help you on your creative journey. So thanks for being with us tonight. And I am Alexis Ann, and I'm drinking a Sierra Nevada porter tonight because I've become a porter addict for some reason. Anything that tastes like chocolate or coffee is apparently my addiction right now. So this is almost gone. I might be a little loopy tonight.
You'll be in good company, as always.
Porters are good winter beers, so.
And it's actually cold here in Florida, so it was a natural selection, obviously.
Nice.
There you go. There you go. Do you have a drink to introduce us to now, Julia?
Oh, I just honestly, my kitchen's a disaster right now, so I just grabbed scotch. It was easy.
Always a
like,
safe choice.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Awesome. Well, I think to kick off the idea of like books that inspire us, let's start at the beginning. So can we talk a little bit about a book that either inspired you to write in general, or maybe a book that inspired you to write in a particular genre?
I mean, how far back do you guys want
as
to go?
far back as you want to go. Go right. Go all the way back.
I did not pull it off my shelf, but I should have. The very first romance that I remember reading was called Taming Lord Rennick, and it's crazy. It's just insane. It has a white Bengal blind seeing eye tiger that only likes the heroine, and like that's the way the hero knows that she's worthy of his love. It's very confusing. It's very sweet. But so that was the first romance that I read. But I've been reading so much as a kid and just loved books and have always loved the kind of the romantic or romance adjacent genre. I was a big fan of Jane Austen and read Persuasion very early, and that was kind of one of those life-changing books. So I think it's hard to kind of pin down one, but that definitely kind of got me on the path. And then I think I've talked about it here before, but Outlander was a really big kind of get sucked into the genre, especially with historical fiction, or historical romance. So that was a big starting one for me.
Cool.
I'll go. So I used to go to this beach house with my family in the summer, and there'd be all these books left there that I would peek into, and like there'd be like women like on the moors and like a house in the background, and you could tell they had like some shady past, but it was never really mentioned. But it was very like romance adjacent. I could tell they meant to put sex in the book, but they didn't. So I would like read these things, being like, I could tell that there's supposed to be dirty stuff, and there wasn't. I got like very mad. Oh, like 8 or 9.
Yes, that's a good age for it, because you're like, I know there's more.
Yeah, like I could tell.
But I don't know what it is.
Right, and I knew that I kind of knew that there were books with like sex in them, and so I kept looking through these things thinking like, so now I know that they were like the genre that was like adjacent to romance. Like once romance was a thing, and then people were writing like sad books about women instead of like happy books. So, but I also, my stepmom gave me Outlander when I was like 16, and I didn't know even then that romance was really a thing either, but I was like really into that one. She also gave us like Planet the Cave Bear. Like my stepmom really gave us some dirty books. I know.
When I was in middle school, and I was like, what is this? I was like, what? Like,
so that was like my introduction to romance, but knowing that romance was a thing was when one of my best friend from college, we like kind of like were staying up late at night, and this is we lived together right after college, and she's like, I want to tell you a secret about me. I was like, okay, what is it? She was like, I like romance novels. And I was like, me too! And so she gave me Nora Roberts' Lawless, which is like so good. And we took it on vacation in Jamaica. Like, okay, so first of all, she was mad at her boyfriend, so he used his miles or something to give us tickets to Jamaica, so we went to Jamaica without him.
Like, stories you only hear when you're talking to Laura Von Holt.
You're married now. It's fine. So she and I went to Jamaica on her own romantic vacation at an all-inclusive resort.
With you.
Yeah, the two of us. And we took like dirty pictures of the hot tub when nobody was there. And then like at night we would like lay out our lingerie on the bed, like not wear it. We would wear like actual pajamas, but then like lay the lingerie on the bed, and then she would do dramatic readings of Nora Roberts' Lawless for me. So good. So good.
Your life is the romance novel.
Yeah, it was really great. We like laid on top of our lingerie. We like didn't have to actually put it on.
I just wrote Lawless down because now I'm never going to be able to think about it without you, and I'm creating a book list.
So that was the first like time that I really understood that I was reading romance and that there was like more of it to be had. Yeah.
Cool.
I got more, but that's for later. Yeah. Yes.
How about you, Lexi? I saw you get some props behind you. So.
I have so many books beside me right now. Like, when you said how far back, and you said as far back, I was like, oh. There are books in the other room. But one of the first books is Agatha Christie. And
yes,
I remember reading And Then There Were None and just thinking, this is everything. I want to be Agatha Christie when I grow up. And that has always stuck with me. And so I have a whole bunch of old Agatha Christie's on my shelf behind me, so I just grabbed one down real fast. But in middle school, I'm the weird one. I don't really read romance a whole ton, and I didn't read it as a kid, so it was Jurassic Park that really got me going.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still genre, and we love genre on this.
Oh. And I loved, what was his other book about, was it Andromeda Strain?
Andromeda Strain.
Yes.
That was a favorite of mine.
It's even got orange highlighter on it still. I mean, I can't get rid of this book because this was the book that made me think that I could be everything I ever wanted to be because I loved science so much. And I wanted to be a scientist, but I wanted to be a novelist more than I wanted to be a scientist, but I wanted to be both. And so Michael Crichton here blends the two and is a #1 New York Times bestseller with all this lovely stuff. And I was like, I want to be him when I grow up. and then I could just keep going. Okay, the first romance that made me just think, okay, I can write a romance was On Dublin Street by Samantha Young. And I love this book. I've read it 10 times. It's the one I pick up every time I feel sad. And that was the one where I liked your voice, I liked your writing style, and I thought, okay. I want to write all the things, but I can write romance because she can write romance, so I can write romance.
How about you, Mary Chris?
Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, no,
Well,
go ahead.
I need to give a shout out to Flowers in the Attic because that was also like a formative book where I was like, this is scary and wrong and really fucked up, but I'm turned on because they mentioned boobs and I want more of this.
So I was sitting at Christmas dinner, and we always have Christmas crackers where you pull them and then you get a favor and a crown and everything. And one of the things in them is a little joke, and you're supposed to be able to play charades with this particular Christmas cracker. And so it was you're supposed to act out, and then underneath it said Flowers in the Attic, and I was like, nope, no. Who wrote this?
That's like the brother and the sister, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And they like
remembering
fall
the right book.
on top of each other on a mattress. And,
Yeah.
and okay, so I like in my mind this scene was like filthy, explicit, like really dirty, and I was all about it. And I reread the whole series a couple years ago just to make sure, and I was like, it was really actually innuendo, but like having been it was before I'd read Clan of the Cave or anything, so like the first like real sex scene, I remember like that's why I thought it was so explicit because it just like said like they did it, and but it's actually when you reread it. Also, I kind of think that maybe V.C. Andrews just herself was locked in an attic because like the sex scenes are written by someone I don't know if she's had sex. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. If she has, it was a different experience.
I think it's your turn, Mary Chris.
Yeah.
I know. Before I start making British humor jokes about brothers and sisters.
Yeah, so
Scary path.
right. Well, I did read that book too. I think if I'm going back early, I would say the earliest memories I have of books are the Babysitters Club books. And my dad was before he retired a school librarian, and so my favorite thing, he was an elementary middle school librarian, and so my favorite thing to do in the summer when I was off school was go with him because I could read multiple Babysitters Club books. Like I didn't have to just get like the one that was at the small library in my town. I could nobody was checking them out, so I could just like read them one after another, and I could literally sit for like an entire afternoon and just read one after the other. So I think that probably was early for me. I recently found them. I actually kind of got on this kick where I was like really looking for them because I had this very fond memory of Babysitters Club, but I couldn't find them anywhere, and I ran across them in like an antique store or something, which I'm not going to think about what that means, but we'll say a used bookstore. And they're kind of not as great as I remember them being, mostly because they retell kind of how all the friends met at the beginning of every single book.
Well, you have your very specific descriptions, right? Like Claudia always has the dangly earrings, and she's the arty one.
Exactly, yes, they're totally, which she was my favorite, by the way.
Yeah, oh, of course.
And
Claudia
she was
so cool.
still my favorite. But I was like, this is so like in a box. Like, why can't the arty girl also like sports? Like, anyway.
Not allowed.
But that's definitely where it started, and I think from there, kind of, I read a lot of like Beverly Cleary growing up. I also remember reading Sweet Valley High a lot. That's it, which I think I would probably pick up now and have that same thing where it's like feels very much like you're getting like the two sisters. I think were kind of good and evil, right?
Yeah. Yes. I remember being mad that I was not a twin.
Yes.
What is wrong with my life? I am not a twin.
Yes, and I remember thinking, like, if I was a twin, I would be the good twin, and that really made me mad. Like, I didn't want to be the good twin.
You guys, the Sweet Valley High saga, where it's like all of their family, that was the best book. That book was so good.
Wait,
Yeah.
which one is?
It's the saga of like how their family came to America and like generations leading up to the twins. It's way better than the entire series. It's really good.
Those two books.
Historical Sweet Valley High.
Life.
Yeah, historical Sweet Valley High. I know, historical Sweet Valley High together.
In one of them, they're in the Great San Francisco earthquake, and she's trapped, and she's with her fiance, but they're not married yet, and they do it, and then he dies because they're trapped, and I was all like, oh my god, what is that? Like, it changed my life.
Not a virgin anymore.
Wow.
She gets pregnant, and she has to go away.
Is that where the twins come from? No.
No, this is too far back.
Yeah, they're like a couple generations after.
They're twins in their family, though. She might have had twins. I don't remember. But those two, oh my gosh. I love those.
I'm going to have to look this. No, I never read those either, obviously.
No, I never read any of them. I was a Nancy Drew girl. So
yes.
Actually, Alicia, Rye, and I had a moment because I read the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys Super Mysteries when I was probably just about to age out, so like maybe middle school, like very early high school, but they were written slightly up, like there was smooching in them, and I remember just loving them, and it turns out she had written some fanfic for those books, and I was just like, what? Now I was just sitting there like, you must give me this. Please tell me what this actually was like. But yeah, I read a lot of Nancy Drew books. I wanted a powder blue convertible, and I wanted to wear pumps. I do. And I did not have a dad who funded me with credit cards and everything, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
I used to ask for Nancy Drews for for my birthday, for Christmas, how many can I get, like, at once? Can I get 5, 10, like...
Yes.
We still have all of my old ones. They're in storage, which is, we're hoping that my sister and I has to have a girl because we have so many of these books in storage.
You could have a boy who liked him.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I have 2 boys, and one is a voracious reader. I've tried several times to get him to read either my old Nancy Drews, or I was obsessed with this series. I called it the Mandy series. The main character was a girl named Mandy. It was set at the turn of the century, and I was obsessed with that.
Was there a garden?
A garden?
Did a garden really heavily factor into these books?
It's
okay. Sorry.
Fiction.
Oh,
I know
probably was not given to
me
me by my father.
I didn't mean to scrunch my nose. I mean, it's technically Christian fiction, but it was mystery. It was very Nancy Drew-like, but it was historical. So I ate it up with like spoons and forks and knives and the whole 9 yards. And I had that was Mandy and the Forbidden Attic was the book that I sat down one day and I didn't stop until the book was over, and immediately was like, get me the next book. Get me the next book and the next book, and what do I have to do to get all the books? That was my turning point book, and I still have it, and I can't get rid of it because it is precious, and it is gold, and I tried to get my son to read it the other day, and he was like, no.
You're like, what if we repackage it, and it looks like a contemporary, like, action-adventure-y type of book? Will you read it then?
He called it Mandy and the Magic Wizard. Like, it's Harry Potter, but with a girl and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that would work. You just have to get on Canva and make a new cover for it.
Oh.
Or just wrap it in brown paper, and then he'll be like, that's a naughty book.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah, then
He's 8, and you scare me right now. He's not.
Well, it'll be a mystery. He'll be like, what's in the paper book? Yeah.
get to read.
Okay, so slightly off topic, but when did you guys start looking for the dirty parts in books? Because everybody does it, right? Doesn't matter if you're a boy, if you're a girl, whatever. I do remember distinctly in 5th grade sitting there with a friend or a few friends on lunch break and reading out the dirty parts of a book that I had gotten from the library, because the family policy was if you can read it and you can understand it, you can read whatever you want, which is how I ended up reading Go Ask Alice at age 10 or something like that, which I'm pretty sure is not the age you're supposed to read that book about tripping and having sex and losing your virginity on LSD, but that's beside the point. So what age do you guys think you got to that point, because I think it was younger than we think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lexi. Sorry.
You just stop.
But it wasn't like I think I was like 8 or 9 because I also kind of went into puberty a little bit early, and so I'd found like a book about like my body, so then it was like I had a lot of questions about what you did with that body. So I was like probably 8 or 9, but it wasn't like I don't remember it being like like there was no like shame or like dirtiness about it because it wasn't to like get off. It was just that I was like really curious, and I was like smart and I was curious, and so I wanted to know because adults don't talk about it or they didn't talk about it. So I wanted to find out like what the real deal was because they were all really secretive about it. And I also had the idea that it was probably fun, but nobody wanted to admit it. So if you could read it in a book, you would get like the straight story. And so
Which
definitely,
I think is the reason a lot of people find romance around that age. I swear there's a reason behind that question, I promise you. But I do think there's a reason that a lot of people say, 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way to 16 is a very common time for people to be finding books in this genre.
Yeah, because I was going to say I'm thinking like probably around age 10 or 11, and it was like a friend's mom's romance book, and I'm sitting here desperately trying to remember which one. I can almost see like it had a peach cover, and it's like somebody really well known. I mean, it's not Nora Roberts but I don't know. I'm not gonna. I'll think of it like in half an hour. But yeah, I remember like specific. No, but it's like in that same like time frame. Yeah. But yeah, no, we were like specifically like we were not reading the book, like we were skimming for.
But I think it's also something about your reading level too, because for a long time they're not able to follow. Like, you can listen to longer narratives, but at a certain point you reach your reading level where you can like immerse yourself in like a longer book and follow a longer plot and have like and actually get complex themes and feelings and things like that. So I think that's also part of it is when you reach that reading level and that level of development, you can kind of imagine even more so things that you haven't imagined before.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember specifically seeking out naughty books very early on, but I do remember in 6th grade being allowed to read Gone with the Wind, and that being...
Oh, yes.
Yes, that being the big deal. And like you were just saying, it was complex, and there were so many things going on, and it was historical, and it was feminist, and it was romance, but it wasn't, and it was all this stuff going on, and that was the first book I remember thinking, I need to read this book, even though I'm young for it.
Oh, yeah, I definitely Gone with the Wind I read when I was 11, and it was like the summer before I went to 6th grade, and like that was hugely formative too, and I remember lying in bed at night, I'd read it already, but I would rethink the scenes, and I would always rewrite them so that Scarlett and Rhett made up, which is like kind of when I started writing romance and reading more romance, I was like, oh, no wonder. Like I was like, God, if she just turned over in bed and been like, what, Rhett? And like, wouldn't have thought that she rejected him.
And that was the first.
No, go ahead.
That was the first book that I could watch the movie of too, and so that was the first time that I started realizing that there were differences in storytelling, and I started paying attention to that as I aged from there, and I read all the different Gone with the Wind books, and then the first book that I snuck home was Dracula.
Just with Gone with the Wind and talking about complex plots, that's the first book that I remember my father pulling me aside and saying, you should read this book, and I'm glad you're reading this book, but you also need to understand what this book is as a period of time, and there are a lot of things in this book I don't want you, glorifying or romanticizing. Like, there are some really horrible things, and we had a very, very frank conversation about racism and kind of why we don't do the things that are talked about in this book in our family and why it shouldn't. So it's interesting that that's one of those books that can be a little bit problematic and complex, and I think story-wise and narrative-wise it's really interesting, and I wonder if that's one of those kind of you have that moment of being like, right, so everything I read isn't going to necessarily be across the board, perfectly presented, and there are going to be problems with books, and you start to being able to comprehend, hopefully, that not every book is unproblematic. So
I totally agree with you, because I remember like being really upset and being like, oh my God, Tara's gonna burn, and I like ran into my mom's room and I was like, who won the war? Just like think about it, and I was like, oh, it's good that the North won the war, but I'm so worried for Scarlet. And that was kind of like my first like anti-hero, you know, it was like I didn't approve
Yeah.
of like anything that like that Tara stood for, but I also was so invested in her well-being and in her making it, and like, and you know, and like what happened when she got back to Tara, you know.
There is so much in that book, and I think it is such a great age to read that, because there's relationships, and there's racism, and there's war, and then there's the historical accuracy versus the fictional aspects of the book. I mean, it's just, I mean, oh, we could have a whole show on Gone with the Wind.
Easily. We could do a lecture
Definitely.
series on it. So what about more recent books?
I will say that The Handmaid's Tale, which isn't more recent, but that I read, I think, like in high school. So you know, I already found books of sex in them, and then I read this one. This one really stuck with me because, like, I had read so much, but it was kind of like the first time where I read a book by a woman that I was like, this lady is doing something like subversive. Like, I think she has something to say. And I really enjoyed knowing that it was like so beautiful and so creative, and it was so political, and at the same time that it was like completely fantastical and whimsical. It was super dark, and she was like reading everybody the riot act. And I really liked that, and I think that's also something that I've always enjoyed about romance, is that it felt like this secret we were keeping from the patriarchy, where it's like, it's just books by women, it's just books for women, and like actually it's like a complete feminist revolution, but like it's right out in the open, so they can't catch us. And so that's why I really like The Handmaid's Tale. Plus there was like honest descriptions of bad sex, and I was like, thank you, Margaret Atwood, now I will know the difference. Like, when you're forced to like have sex for procreation by the patriarchy, it feels this way. In romance novels, when you're consenting, it feels awesome. I was like, now I know. So that was this is an important book about consent. Yes. I was inspired.
Bad orgasm.
Because consent is important.
Yeah.
Are you taking notes?
I am. Hey,
I'm looking. I have
notes.
No, I take notes too. I'm calling her out on what I'm doing myself. I think for me, I actually blogged about this earlier this year, but the book that kind of made me feel like I could write was a book called English as a Second Language by Megan Crane, who actually writes as Caitlin Cruz as a romance author now primarily, but this was kind of in the time of sort of lighter women's fiction, chick lit, but it was just, I borrowed it from a friend, and I just remember reading it and thinking the people in the story felt so real, and the voice felt so conversational, and it felt, I don't know, like an email from a friend. And I remember reading it and loving it, and it was kind of the first time, because I've always been a reader, and I've always kind of read, because I grew up from Babysitters Club and Sweet Valley High to like Meg Cabot's books, and I mean, so like very much the same kind of lighthearted, fun books, just more adult. But this was kind of the first one that I'd read where I was like, I feel like I could write something like this, and I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was probably something with voice and tone, or maybe just she was writing about a character who was in grad school in England and just kind of lost, and maybe like I was just feeling that way in my life, and I felt very understood. I don't know what it was, but something about it, I was like, I think I could write like this type of book. So that was definitely the one for me, and I reread it. I hadn't read it in years. Like I said, I borrowed it from a friend, so I didn't even own it, which was kind of weird. So I bought it, and I kicked off my Books and Brews review series on my blog by starting with that book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it the second time around too. So. But again, it's that nostalgia thing. I mean, I think I would always like it because it was like, this is the one.
I was totally in the same camp with you on the book that made me want to start writing, having a lot to do with the voice and the connection, and there's something about it that just, it clicks, and you go, oh, I can do that. Or something about the characters even, I'm not sure. Anyway, so the books that I had just had a baby, and I wanted a new book series, and I had been struggling to find. I am a series hoarder. Like, give me 13 books in a row, and I am in the happiest place in the world. And I had been in a huge drought with finding a series that I actually liked that had a female character that wasn't raped or killed or just unnecessary to the storyline, and I just really wanted to find something with a female protagonist, and I went to Barnes & Noble with a gift card and cried because I just had a baby and couldn't find a female protagonist I wanted to read about, and I sat on an aisle in Barnes & Noble and cried because I couldn't find a book. And then I found the Bones series, and it's not my favorite series, but it had a female protagonist, and it's written by an anthropologist, and I'm an anthropologist, and she writes books on the side, and I remember as I'm reading the books going, I could do this! I could do this too! And I started writing right then and there, but it wasn't until years later that I actually started writing. So that was the big aha moment for me, and it was actually the Hunger Games that got me going. Because, again, I had been in another female protagonist drought, and I was like, I just want a female protagonist who's not raped or murdered. And I picked up The Hunger Games, and she's awesome. And I was like, oh, my God, they're publishing books about females that are not horrible. I want to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book right now. And that's when I started writing.
I would also say, oh, sorry, Julia.
Yeah, go for
I would be really remiss if I did not mention fairy tales, because those are definitely like the first stories that, and I think I probably need about 3 or 10 years of therapy to explain how deeply they have like been ingrained in my life. I've like, now at the age of 35, I'm like, oh, my entire life's work is actually about fairy tales. That's fine. It's just an obsession. But Cinderella is definitely like, I mean, I could talk for hours about it, but I like this story. I've read so much fairy tale theater about like the meaning and the psychology of Cinderella, but I can't get enough of this story, and I write about it a lot. And I think it's just something about like the psychology of fairy tales, where the way they are fantastical, but they lead you through a psychology of like the darker parts of transformation. That's really important, I think, in a way that we don't get that very often in other stories, especially as women. You know, it's kind of new to have like really strong female characters that go through like a lot of stuff that ends up being good for them, like, you know, winning like the Hunger Games or something. And there's so much in fairy tales about the darker parts of moving through like adolescence and into adulthood that aren't covered all the time in other stories. I mean, men get them a lot more than women do. So shout out to fairy tales.
I like that.
Nice.
Big shocker that I'm sitting here and I'm realizing all my books are English. So I apologize for that. So I have two big categories, and one is English coming-of-age stories about young women who write. So probably, I don't know if you can see how like dog-eared and disgusting this.
I Capture the Castle.
I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith is one of my favorite books, and it's one of those ones where I can pick it up and it's got an iconic first line that just says, I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. And I can pick it up and I can read it like I read Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion, which is just jump into wherever in the book, and I just love it. For whatever reason, this particular book about a young woman who is writing and trying to find her voice and trying to find her place in her family while also going through this big change in her life really resonated. And then this other book, which is not as well known, but it's called The Green Gage Summer by Rumer Godden. They gave to me when I was 16, and it's another one of those where it's a young woman who basically her family gets dumped in France for a summer, which sounds fabulous, and she kind of goes through this big transitional summer, and she writes about it, and it's a whole thing with this kind of slightly on the outskirts of her family female protagonist who also happens to be English. And the other big influencing thing other than romance novels, which I can't remember the book that made me want to write, except I do remember Harlequin having a whole section of its website dedicated to if you want to write romance novels. And so I was like, I do want to write romance novels when I was in high school, and I started writing a romance novel, and I never finished it, and I never, did anything with it. But it was just the act of actually getting in there and somebody being like, yeah, you can totally write a romance novel. Why wouldn't you try? The thing they don't know about, of course, is that it's hard work, because I did what everybody else does, I think, which is, oh, this seems easy. Like, these are breezy and whatever, and it's hard being breezy and whatever. Don't let anybody tell you any different. But other than that Harlequin site and all of those books, I also read a ton of 19th century female-centered novels. This is Anthony Trollope's Can You Forgive Her, which is not romantic. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's arguable whether it really has a happy ending or not. But it's the first in a big, long series that he did. But the really, really big one is North and South, which has, hands down, my favorite ending to a mini-series. The BBC did the 4-hour mini-series with Richard Armitage in it, and the ending is just wonderful. And for whatever reason, this book connected, and I just absolutely love it, and I reread it probably at least once a year. In fact, looks like I abandoned it midway through, so there you go. Apparently I got whatever I emotionally needed out of it. But for whatever reason, just those 19th century novels were a big connecting line for me, and I ended up writing a lot about the 19th century, so there you go.
Yeah, Julie, you're making me realize that actually some of the most inspiring book that I ever got about writing was actually a blank book. When I was 8, my mom had this friend who she only had for like a few months. Like, I don't remember this woman being there for longer than like 6 months. But I had done something, and the friend said to me, like, oh, you have a real way with words. And she gave me a journal, and she's like, you should write. And so I started like writing like poetry at like age 8. And it was so special that like someone had said, here is a place for you to like write a story.
Yes.
And that was definitely like a formative moment, to have like a blank book and a place and somebody to say you should do it.
And somebody to say it matters whether you write a story or not, I think is really helpful. And I think that it definitely takes that moment sometimes of somebody being like, no, you actually can do this. It's totally okay. It's allowed. You don't have to be embarrassed about it.
Mm-hmm. I'm also interested because this is, I feel like, come up a couple times a little bit. Or maybe it was just that your comment made me think about it, Laura, but how many of us wrote when we were young and then didn't write again? Like wrote poetry when we were teenagers, or wrote, I wrote like really silly New Kids on the Block fanfic when I was like in middle school, but and no, you can't have it. I'm going to burn it before I die. Actually, I might not. It's kind of funny.
I mean, I think that could be an opt-in for a mailing list. Like, I would give you 10 email addresses if I could have just one page
email address
of that fan fiction.
Wow.
Just saying, that is appealing.
Like 10 email addresses sold.
Sold. That's 10 people.
I will give you 10 of my friends' email addresses.
She'll do it too. She's vicious.
I'm gonna tell you what, I'll give them the fanfic and an actual like edited book that I've written as an adult.
People.
But I'm just curious. I mean, is that something that you all did? Did you write when you were very young and then not come back to it until much later?
I remember writing. I remember always writing, but not taking it really seriously. And at some point, I went to college, and it became a much lower priority because I was doing all the academic work and all that stuff. And it does. It kind of takes over your life. And then I got out of school, and the reason I started writing romance was I was in graduate school, and I was just at my highest burnout level possible. I was just running on zero capacity. And I needed something that I really loved, and I kind of went back to that thing that I had always done when I was a kid. I was always that kid who was writing in journals, and I was always that kid who was scribbling and writing god-awful poetry and, short stories that didn't make any sense, but it was writing, and that was what was really important. And so I came back to it after a few years off, and I actually came back to romances after a few years off as well. I kind of had forgotten for a while there why I enjoyed reading them, and then kind of fell back into it when I needed them, I think. that was the important thing, was I needed to be in the right place.
Yeah, I'm definitely the same way. I had that. I was writing a lot as like a little kid, and I had that journal, and I, wrote stuff. Like I won a couple of creative writing contests in like middle school and high school, and I wrote. And I went to Sarah Lawrence, so like you had to write all the time, and I took a couple of playwriting classes and poetry classes. But right after college, with getting into the real world and all the jobs I was working, it totally fell off. And then one of my good friends, Kate Skelsa, her book Fans of the Impossible Life came out this year from HarperCollins. She was like, hey, do you want to have, it's so good, do you want to have a writing group? Because we had been writing buddies in college. And so we started meeting for these amazing brunches every like week or two, where we found like all you can drink mimosas with brunch for $15 for like food and all you can drink mimosas. So we would like read each other's pages and then come to brunch and get like hammered and then give feedback, and the feedback was always like, yeah, it's so amazing, my face has melted off. Which is exactly what you need when you are coming back. At any point you need that feedback, but when you're coming back to writing after taking a couple years off and like being slaughtered by the real world, to have like people being like, I can't believe you made this. That's the exact kind of critique partner you need.
That is the absolute truth, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, can you see the shelf right here where I'm pointing? Those are all journals, all blank journals. They're all from my childhood. They're all half-written stories.
Oh. I really used to have them, but I definitely don't.
They're not new kids. They're essentially Nancy Drew fiction. Yes. If I'm being serious with myself.
Guys, opt-ins. Like, how many email addresses can I give you?
I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so when we moved, I found all these journals, and I'm flipping through them, and I'm like, I've always been good.
That modest.
A lot of them were like 5 pages and then nothing. And I'm like, well, I just got bored with it.
Do you know how
so yours can totally be a mailing list opt-in, because I did not have that reaction when I read mine. I was not like, you are so good. I was like, this is terrible.
I don't think anybody expects quality from New Kids on the Block and Block fiction. Like, we just want to know what it was.
Back up. Who here has not written fan fiction at some point? Okay, exactly.
You have to write fan fiction. You have to.
I will say I never knew that fan fiction was a thing. I read what I wrote was a lot of fairy tale fan fiction. I still write fairy tale fan fiction, actually. That's my genre, guys. I write fairy tale fan fiction.
Yes, I didn't realize this was called fan fiction when I was writing it. No. That was an add-on. It was like my best friend and I wrote them, and we would call each other up. So it also features like all my actual friends.
Yes. All my stories, all my friends were my friends at the time.
Yes.
Oh, you guys, in college, there was one of my friends, she had a crush on this other girl at Sarah Lawrence, and I won't mention either of their names, but I would give my friend erotic fan fiction about how my friend was having a threesome with her girlfriend and this other girl for her birthday. But I would get too embarrassed when it got really into it, so then I would be like, fade to black, more upstairs. They never got very far. It was always the starting of the makeout, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, I actually don't know how this works, but
I wrote X-Files fan fiction before I knew what fan fiction was, and I also wrote some nasty Doctor Who fan fiction as well. Yeah.
Wait,
that
Julia,
may have to be an opt-in one day.
Julia, I know so many people who would give you all of their databases for that Doctor Who fan fiction.
All their credit card numbers.
We're going to create a new newsletter funnel.
You guys
yes.
there's an untapped gold mine deep within your journals. I don't know why we haven't. This is as an entrepreneur, I'm like, you guys, the market is ready.
I'm getting back to Mary Chris's question.
I don't even know what my question was. I don't even know.
Yes, I did write a lot
right,
as a kid.
Yes.
And then as soon as high school hit, I stopped writing because there was no time. I was in a really intensive creative writing and literature program. And I mean, my days and nights were just school until I was done with grad school. And at that point, I would drive. I remember driving because I taught at two community colleges on two totally different ends of Tampa. And I would drive and I would make up stories as I was driving and think, one day I'm going to write. And it wasn't until like 5 years ago that I finally said, this is bullshit. I've wanted to write since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So there was a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I did so much academic writing, and academic writing is so different from fiction. And it took a while. It took a while. And it took cheerleaders, like Laura was talking about, to be like, no, what you wrote was good. Keep going, keep going. I wouldn't be here today without those couple of cheerleaders when I first sat down and started writing, because I would have just given up. This was stupid. What was I doing? This is idiot. I need a real job. Peace them out.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we also, that's a really good segue, because I think we also, just knowing the props that you guys have from earlier, we also have some books that are inspiring. So like books that are those cheerleaders for you. So yeah, if you all want to talk some about books, maybe not fiction books, but books that have helped inspire you or kind of get you past rough patches in writing or life.
Do you want to go first, Laura, or me?
Yeah. So I mean, kind of on topic too of like going away from writing and coming back. When I first started writing again, I was writing a play, and I was like working, and I would like read this book on the subway because my writing buddy Kate Skelsa had told me I should read it, and it's called The Right to Write by Julia Cameron. I don't know if you can see that. Which she also wrote The Artist's Way, which I've only ever read one chapter of, and I like.
Yep, I got it right here.
Yeah, and then I only get past the first chapter. I also have Vein and Gold. I've only like read the introduction. I'm sorry, whatever. And but Right to Write was really good for me because I was coming back to it, and it was, I mean, one of the things, it's called an invitation and initiation into the writing life. And I think one of the things, like you said, why it's important to have cheerleaders is that so often in our life when we're writing books or doing anything creative, we are waiting for permission. Like, that's really what we're doing, and you have to give it to yourself. And so this was kind of like this manifesto about being like, these are the 18 million reasons why you have every right to have a voice, why you have every right to write it down, why you have every right to try what you want to try. And also the other thing that I like about Julia Cameron in general is that she really understands kind of like the mysticism and the practicality involved in creative work, and especially writing. And one thing that I think is really important that people don't talk about enough, especially with writing, but in any creative genre or like entrepreneurship or anything where you're taking a risk or being creative, is that it takes an incredible amount of spiritual fortitude to create work.
Yes.
And so it's just all about like the morning pages and the artist dates and the walks and all of the things, and how much of like a strong mental game you have to have on the back end to be able to keep producing work and having faith in your creativity. So this book was like huge for me to like have somebody kind of discuss what it takes to be a creative person. So that was hugely inspiring. Plus it was just somebody being like, yeah, do it. I was like, yeah. I was like, Margaret Atwood wants me to. Like, yeah. So I'll start with that one. I've got more, but I'll let somebody else go.
Well, it's a very similar thing for me with Amanda Palmer's The Art of Asking, which it's very much about permission to do what you want to do creatively. And I don't know about anybody else, but for me, I was stuck in this, being a writer, you have to fit into a financial scheme. And if you're not producing, if you're not creating a product that is bringing in a certain amount of money, then are you doing anything valuable? And there was a lot of, I don't know, just confusion on what is creativity and how does it fit into the family and the economy and all of these things. And then you get filled with the introvert and the self-doubt and all that fun stuff. And so picking up this book and seeing her equate what creativity means in that big wheel of things, it was huge for me. There's a lot of inspirational stuff about what it means to be a creative person and how you fit into the scheme of things. And in my group of creative people here where I live, it's been a big conversation topic because we all struggle with taking and asking for what we need in order to be successful at what we're doing.
The donuts.
And it's been just even recently. I keep stopping and going, oh my God, I asked for this, and someone said, yeah, sure, no problem. And that's what the book is about. It's the art of asking for what you need. We wanted a logo to go with my new book, the D909, and someone was like, dude, this is what I do for a living. I'd love to create a logo for you. Just give me credit in the copyright page. And we were like, for real? But so often people love to be part of the process, and all you have to do is ask. You just have to put out there what you need, but we don't do that naturally because we feel like we're imposing on other people or we're somehow taking, when really what we're doing is giving. And so it was so great for me to read this book and understand that I needed to get past my fears and past my own inhibitions and all of those things and just say, this is what I'm doing, be proud of what I'm doing, and ask for what I need.
I read this really great article about just kind of like entrepreneurship, but also like making money if you're selling, a service or a product or something, but especially for women because, culturally we're not supposed to ask for anything. Takes some time to undo that. Okay. But it was great because it was just a very blunt article, and she was like, you are the lion and everyone else is the antelope. And that doesn't mean like massacring people, but like the lion's like, I want that antelope, boom, it gets it, So like when I'm pitching things now, I'm like, I am the lion, you are my prey.
I'm going to start texting this to you.
Yeah,
I'm the lion.
You are the lion.
You are the lion.
I'm the lion. Or like I hate talking on the phone. I have to call all these like venues and stuff, and I'm always like, I'm the lion. And I'm like, hello, are you available on this date? Like probably really overly aggressive because I'm like trying so hard to be the lion, but I find it really helpful.
Better to be over than under.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think the thing I liked a lot in Amanda Palmer's book, which talks about the fraud police,
Yes.
which taps into a little bit what you were talking about, but this idea that I'm not good enough, like Alexis and I did a master class for our my local writing group, and my very first reaction when I got the email asking me to do that was like, oh my God, like me? Like, no,
Yes.
not me. And thankfully it was email, so I was like, wait a second. The appropriate response is like, oh my God, no, not me. It's, oh yes, I would love to do that, and I know someone else who would also like to do that. And we'll be better together. And
we are.
But I think it's this idea that, and I think it is partially maybe ingrained in us as women, but also just this idea that if you're not at a certain level in your career, if you haven't won certain awards or you're not making a certain amount of money, you're not like qualified to talk about something. And so she talks a lot about like letting go of that idea of like getting rid of the fraud police, but I liked in her book how honest she was that even like kind of at her level of career, she still has that thought of like, I'm a total phony, like I'm a total fake, why are people paying like to see me do this? And so I think about that, it was a really good image for me because I catch those moments where I'm like, I totally like I'm letting the fraud police like take over my thoughts, and if people are asking me to do this, they're obviously doing that for a reason, or if I'm feeling ready to do this, I'm obviously ready to do it. But that was a big image for me, was this idea of getting rid of those fraud police. They're not coming.
Fraud police.
They're not coming for you.
By far the best part of that book. I mean, when I talk about this book with other people, they're like, the fraud police.
Yes.
Because
and the trick, yeah, go ahead.
I think it doesn't, you can be a writer, an artist, a photographer, or whatever, but I do think it is a largely female issue. I don't think as many men suffer from the fraud police as we do, because we're taught that we need to be given the permission. We have to reach a certain level of accolades, or we have to be given a review. We have to be preferred by the publisher that we are good enough to have written this, as opposed to just saying, I'm good enough for this and taking it. And so the fraud police is, it is such a huge part of this book. And when I talk to other people, that's the one part that resonates with everyone, because that's the barrier that so many of us struggle with.
So and it's inside us.
Oh, go for it. Sorry.
Oh, that's all I was gonna say. It's inside. I mean, like, you create the fraud police. Like, they're not actually there.
I swear, sometimes I've thought someone is gonna come and be like, "Get out of here."
No, you do. You think that person's gonna stand up in the room and be like, "No, just sit down. You can't." Like you really think that's gonna happen, and it never does.
No.
Ever.
More often than not, though, actually, people come up and they're like, "Thank you so much. I needed this," and you're like, "Me?
Okay.
Like, was there someone else here?"
Right. Yes. What were you gonna say, Julia?
Oh, so I am gonna blow everybody up. I'm sorry. I'm standing off on my own little ledge here because I don't respond well to those books. I've never, for whatever reason, I just don't connect with them, and I really, really struggle with it. And so I held this up earlier when Laura was talking about Julia Cameron, and I tried to read this book, and I just don't connect with them. The one thing I got out of it was morning pages, which is something practical, which is something I can do, something I can implement. And I think that there's this side of my brain that just like, give me a thing and I can do it, and I can internally motivate myself to do that. And I find, for whatever reason, conversation with people like this to be a much better delivery system for the ideas you guys are talking about than books. I tried to read The Art of Asking, and it just didn't connect with me. I know you guys wanted to talk about Big Magic a little bit, and I didn't connect. It's just a whole genre of things that hasn't connected with me for whatever reason. So a lot of my nonfiction stuff is very like practicality-wise, as opposed to talking about kind of more ideas-wise. For whatever reason, I respond much better to that going person to person as opposed to in books. So I don't know whether I'm a really weird outlier or whether it's just different personalities and looking for different things, but it's one of those weird things.
I think, Julie, you're not alone. I mean, like I said, I now teach a class called the Creative Insight Journey, which sounds like the most woo-woo thing. Like, you would think I would have the Artist Way memorized. And I've only read the first chapter of it because it had morning pages and the journaling is really practical. I think some people are just more process-oriented. Like, some people need to hear about, I mean, like, for instance, like, you have a journalism background, so you can, like, sit down, you can write, you can jam it out. Like, you're into, like, the outlines and the real, like, measurable results. The process.
Like 100% like give me Rachel Aaron 10K or 2K to 10K, and that is like my Bible. I love that thing. I've reread it like 10 times. It's my whole editing system now. I respond really, really well to that. And you're right, it is process.
Mm-hmm. But I think also, like, I mean, and it also just depends on, like, what inspires you. Like, you like having a plan. So somebody can give you a plan and a couple tools is going to inspire you. Like, when I am afraid to write, I have to sit down and imagine that Oprah is interviewing me, because I like to think about fame and I like to think about the bigger reasons of things. So then I feel inspired to write. But like, it's just kind
I'm
of
right
like
there with you, Laura.
everybody. Yeah. I was like, Oprah needs to know, and I'm going to tell her.
like a lion, you're going to tell.
I'm a lion, Oprah. And that's why the right to write worked for me, because I'm entitled to be this good.
You're definitely not alone, Julia. I have never read a self-help book and gotten anything out of it, especially when it comes to like, people give me parenting books like it's crack, and I'm like, burn it right now. Just burn it. So it was a huge shock when Mary Chris, I think it was the first one who was like, no, seriously, this was kind of helpful. And then someone else, and then someone, like 3 people in a row in the same week were like, seriously read this book. And I started reading it and was like, give me the book. It was just one of those things that it connected with me. And so, like Laura was saying, it has to be that thing that just connects with you for whatever reason.
And I think it's really interesting. You brought up such a good point, Julia, because for my love of Art of Asking, and I'm reading Big Magic now, and I'm loving it, I also don't read a ton of books like this. And I have to be careful because one book that I recommend to people all the time is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, which I've never read. I've never read it.
So much.
So that's why I've had to stop recommending it.
Love it.
But here's
absolutely
the thing.
love it.
I think I love that book because my husband read it and talked to me about it. So exactly what you're describing. And he distilled down for me probably all I really needed to hear from that book. And so I think I love it, but I don't, and so I've had to start being really careful because this happens because he likes to read in that genre more than I do, and he'll tell me these great things, and I'll go around spouting them to other people, and then I'm like, but I actually haven't read the book, so like, oh, I don't like, yeah.
I think I read The War of Art, so I can help you with it. And so here's what I was like. What we're saying is that you have to find the things that speak to you and that help you. The War of Art is super great, and Stephen Pressfield is really great. But the other problem with The War of Art is that it talks a lot about resistance, and so then people use that as like another excuse and another mask for fear. They're like, well, I'm in resistance now, and it's like, well,
crazy because part of me just wanted to shake them and be like, force yourself out of it, or talk your way out of it, or artist date your way out of it, or journal your way. Do something. Don't just.
I didn't read that part.
Well, because other thing is like from my memory of The War of Art, there's actually not a lot on how to actually move past resistance. He's just like
there isn't. If you have resistance for 80 pages.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna get on like a little bit of a high horse, guys, and I'm a lion, so I'm entitled to my high horse because I'm gonna eat it later. But so I'm going to talk about Big Magic because I totally love it, and I totally love that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote it, and I love the podcast that she has around it, and like all the people that she interviewed, and there's so much stuff in here that is so great because she gets further than Stephen Pressfield, where she starts like she tells you things that have happened, and she tells you like what she does to try to move through them. The only problem that I have with this book is that I feel like it was written ahead of its time, and the reason why it was written ahead of its time is because Elizabeth Gilbert doesn't know that we're supposed to be best friends, and then she's supposed to release this book, and it's supposed to have a second book where it's like, here I have identified all the problems with like being fearful around creativity, and my best friend, who's also best friends with Oprah, Laura Von Holt, is here to give you all of the tools that are like very practical to move past all of this. So here you go. Now I, Elizabeth Gilbert, best-selling author 2 times, I was going to introduce my friend Laura Von Holt. Who is a lion.
It works for me because that would be all about process and practicality, right? Like, here's how you do the things that you need to do.
Right, and so this book is kind of killing me, and that's why I started this like informal book club via Periscope, which I'll start up again this week because I dropped it. But it's kind of killing me because she'll talk about something, and I'm like, okay, I am now trained in the Creative Insight Journey, which is a class that was developed at Stanford for business people and has now been like taken out for everyday people. And I have now 60 tools to help you with this one problem. And Elizabeth Gilbert didn't know about it, so she couldn't put it in the book. So all these people are like, I don't want to be fearful around my creativity. And I'm like, I can help you, but I'm only based in New York City.
So when's your book coming out, baby?
It's going to be called I Am the Lion.
I love that, first of all. I like that.
I actually do really like that.
Me too.
You could have a big mane on the front.
Yeah, it would just be like my face in like a children's lion costume, but it would also be like sequins like the sun, you know? Yeah.
I can weirdly see this.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good. When the musical comes out, it'll be like, even awesome.
You have to simultaneously write the musical.
Yeah, totally. No, it's gonna be like me. I am the lion, like with the Ricketts.
That would be an amazing way to get information about how to move past fear.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes,
These gorgeous women perform on stage
Yes.
and almost
precision
nothing.
dancing.
You can write the frickin' book.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It would be called like Meet Your Fear.
I am the lion.
Yeah, I am the lion. Like, come with me through the woods. It's like the cowardly lion, but like mixed up with like a unicorn with like sequins. But like I'm also like, this was developed at Stanford. Awesome. But Big Magic is really good, and like I said, it's the kind of thing. I think so many people are like, oh, one day I'll write a book. Oh, one day I'll do this. Oh, one day I'll do that. And they never get around to it, because one of the most important things about creativity is having, like I said, like the spiritual fortitude and the mental game, be able to go through like the darker parts, the hard parts, like the how do I get to my word count? How do I get around this plot hole? How do I get around just like the fear of putting something out there? And it takes a huge amount of fearlessness to be able to do that. And fearlessness isn't just the kind of thing where you're like, I'm not afraid. It's like you have to get very comfortable with your fear, and you have to be able to like bring, like she says, like the fear along with you in your journey and in your process, because it never goes away. And fear is awesome. It keeps you from like running in front of traffic, but it needs to be an ally instead of an obstacle.
I like that.
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
that was my favorite part.
100% agree with that. Now that you've told me about that, I feel like I don't have to read the book because I've gotten the thing out of it that I need.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Julia.
Appreciate that.
She also gives you permissions, and so yeah, I'll just say, Elizabeth Gilbert and I, everybody listening, if you are waiting for permission today, on this day, January 5th, 2016, we have given you permission to go after your dream. So you don't need to ask for it from anybody else, and you can email me, and I'll give it to you again.
And she actually will.
I will.
Yes.
No, I think you're 100% correct. Nothing makes me sadder than the people who, you know, when you say, "Oh, I'm a romance novelist," and they say, "Oh, I have this thing that I love, this creative thing that I love, and I just feel like I don't have time to do it, or I've never done it," and you can see the regret, and that, in a way, is just absolutely heartbreaking, right? Because you have that moment of being like, no, but you should do the thing that you want to do, and you should allow yourself to, you know, if you really love it, if that's what you want to do, and you want, you know, to make the time sacrifices and all of those things, like, I don't care if it's needing permission to, you know, tell people about it and not be embarrassed, or to just, you know, take the time and do the thing that you want and the thing that you need to do, or whatever. But my hope is that however you get it, whether it's from books or something else, that people kind of tap into that somehow. Because I do think it's important. I absolutely think it's important to give yourself permission to do these things and to be proud of them also.
Well, you also have to think of, I mean, or I think you have to think of your life in a kind of like hero's journey way, where if you have the idea, like that is the call and you need to accept the call, and then you go into the journey, and that is the part where you need the allies, which are maybe a book like Big Magic, or you need your writing group, you know, and you need like the strategies, and you need the initiation, and you need to find like the little old Yoda wise man, whoever that is, to like guide you through the dark parts, you know, until you earn your lightsaber or whatever, and then you like conquer everything. But the most important part of that process is like hearing the call and accepting it, and also knowing that the obstacles are part of it. They're not the thing that's supposed to make you like turn. I mean, Dorothy didn't like get into like the trees where the apples are being thrown at her and be like, I'm gonna run back to the munchkins. It's like, no, you gotta keep going. Okay?
I love what you just said. The obstacles are part of the journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That I think so many people don't understand that, because you get that culturally, I'm going to get all anthropological here real quick.
With you.
Culturally, we have this conception that you are born with an innate ability. You are either good at math or you are not. You are either good at writing or you are not. You are either Mozart or you are not. You are either Picasso or you're not. And that's not true. And so many people start this creative journey because they loved writing or they loved photography or whatever it was in their youth, and they don't continue it because I'm not good enough. I hit an obstacle, so clearly that is an indication that I am not a genius at this and I should not do it. But the reality is you should do it because not everybody is Picasso or Mozart. It hasn't stopped the 100,000 other people who have written novels that have meant something to somebody from writing that novel. So the obstacles are part of the journey. They're not some sort of indication that you are not good enough to do it.
Yeah, I think that's partially in Big Magic. I haven't finished it, and obviously I never finished reading The War of Art. But I think it's from that where he talks about showing up, but it might be somewhere else. But like this idea that like you have to keep showing up for this creative endeavor. Like you can't. It isn't always easy. Like you don't always want to sit down and write. Like it's not this perfect muse that comes in, and so much of it. And I heard this, in podcast or read it in different books over and over and over, and listening to creative people talk about their process. It is sometimes this inspiration and this flow that you get into, but like 80% of the time, it's showing up and doing the work. And that doesn't mean it. I think sometimes in our heads, like as creatives, we're like, it's not good if it's not like coming to me and natural and floating in the ether. But it is still good. I mean, sometimes it's not. Sometimes like, that hour of writing is crap and you have to throw it out. But like, but 90% of the time, it is good. And but you have to show up. Like you have to sit down and do it. And that's the piece that I think sometimes stops people as they get to that point where they're like, whoa, like I have to carve out time for this. I have to like show up even on the days when it's hard and I don't want to and I'm tired. And that's the side of creativity that is so important but can be tough and discouraging.
I so often say to people, you can't edit a blank page. It's one of my favorite things. If you want to write. And then from there, you can do something with it. But if you're just sitting there thinking about writing, you're never going to become a writer. You have to actually write to be a writer. And Julie and I just spoke a couple days ago about having something that you have to kill your darlings. You love it, but you have to kill it. You have to kill the darling, and you have to rewrite it. And so often, you loved it, but it wasn't right. And what you write is better. And so it's a good process. That obstacle is a good process.
Mm-hmm. And the thing I think also is great about some of these books, and for me, I love process stuff. So I can sit and listen to people talk about their writing process for like 12 hours a day. That would make me really, really happy. One of the things that I think is really helpful is knowing it is almost never as easy as it looks. Very rarely is it as easy as it looks. And most of the people in my life don't know anything about the sitting at the kitchen table and writing when everybody else is out, on a Saturday night, or writing in the morning and then going to work and then coming home and writing at night. And I love it, and so I do it happily, but it's also one of those things where, sometimes it is important to remind people. I had an agent for 3 years before we sold anything. We tried to sell a lot of stuff, and I will tell you the full version of that story on this show one of these days, just to be realistic about it, because I think it would have been very easy to say, we didn't sell the first book, so clearly things are not meant to be, and so you just throw it out the window, whatever, you don't work, you don't write, you don't whatever. But I do think that it's important to remember that people evolve and grow, and sometimes it takes just pig-headed, sheer, ridiculous refusal to give up on it because you really love it. And I think that is one great thing that you do get, and I have gotten out of a lot of these books when I've tried to read them and then gotten frustrated, is that in a lot of cases most of the authors will tell you it is work, and whether you feel like that work is engaging you spiritually or process-wise, or it's just like the sit down and get it done type of thing, the message that comes across is it's not perfect, don't expect it to be perfect, but you will get through it and you will push your way through it if you want to, and you'll push through it in your own way also, which I think is important. Not everybody wants to be as pig-headed and stubborn as me because it doesn't work for them. Not everybody responds to word counts. Not everybody responds to, kind of engaging in the more spiritual side of writing or the more creative side of writing. Everybody's process is different, and everybody's kind of outlook on that is different. But so long as you're creating and you're trying to help yourself do this, and if you're stuck, you're seeking out help from somebody like Laura. I think that's that's really important. But it's important to remember that you know it's not as easy as it looks. It's never as easy as it looks.
Yeah, so I think the moral of the story is it's never as easy as it looks. It's supposed to be hard, and the best thing you can do is find comfort in that other people find it hard too. So if it's hard, you're in the right place. And then the other thing is ask for what you want and be a lion.
I really want to build a league of their own right now. Hard is what makes it great.
But I think that's probably a good note to end on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Sure, yeah.
Like you teach this stuff or something, Laura.
I know.
I just have a certification, guys.
And in fact, if you need some guidance, we have the perfect person for you right here with us right now. Why don't you tell us all about you?
Yes. Okay. So here are my plugs. So my name is Laura Von Holt. I live in New York City, and I am launching the New York program of something called the Creative Insight Journey, which is an 8-week creativity and mindfulness program, which is based off of the Stanford master's degree course called Creativity in Business, and it is designed for people who are at a crossroads in their life. Maybe they don't know what the next step is in their career or in their relationship, and they're just looking for a way to get unstuck. So I teach the classes live in New York starting at the end of January, and if you get on my email list, which you can just go to lauravonholt.com, which is on my lower third, there'll be a quick little opt-in. You just put your email in, you're good. And I will tell you more about where to find those classes and also how I can refer you to take them online if you're someone who is not in New York. If you travel, you can take them online with my teacher, Jennifer Grace. And also, we are launching in California and Florida and several other countries this January. So
Florida?
Yeah, Florida. It's in Fort Lauderdale and Miami.
Wrong coast.
I know, sorry.
Howdy.
But the online is everywhere. So go to lauravonholt.com, give me your email. I won't sell it to Mary Chris in exchange for fanfiction. That I won't sell. I'll give you other email addresses, Mary Chris. But if you go to lauravonholt.com and enter your email, I won't sell it for fanfiction. But if I get fanfiction from Mary Chris, I'll probably pass it along.
So you'll sell me.
Yes, I will. The other thing is if you guys are into fashion or personal style, I am now the new entrepreneur of a social app for personal style, which is going into beta hopefully in February. It's called Cinderly, Cinderly.com, like Cinderella, my life's work is about Cinderella, guys. Cinderly.com, and you can sign up to be a beta tester for that. Okay, those are all my plugs.
Thanks for coming on.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Mary Chris.
Yeah, I'm Mary Chris Escobar, and you can find me at my website and my little bar down there. I do give you a novella for signing up for my mailing list. It is currently not New Kids on the Block fanfic, but you never know. You never know. I might polish that up. But yes, so I wish I lived in New York and could take Laura's class. And if you live in New York or the surrounding areas, you should definitely do that. That's all I've got.
Julia.
I got nothing, guys. I just
You turned it up today. You got so much.
Right?
no, I
your
do
mailing
have
list
stuff.
so we know when it will come out. Oh my God, I do.
Okay.
I'm bringing it back. Yes, so I do have stuff. So that book that I turned in today is the third book in a 3-part series, or 3-book series called The Governesses, and the first one is up for pre-order right now. It comes out in September. It's very exciting. It's called The Governess Was Wicked, so you can either find it under my name or on my website or just by Googling it on Amazon or whatever. So yes, that's very exciting, and I'm really thrilled about that. And that book is in fantastic shape because of my wonderful, wonderful editor Marla. So other than that, I am working on books. So more books to come, more things to plug in the future. But for now, The Governess Was Wicked is the big one to go ahead and pre-order, and hopefully a cover soon. So next time or the time after, maybe I'll have something pretty to show you guys.
I can't wait for that. And you can find her at
I'm so
juliekellywrites.com.
Yes.
And I am Alexis Ann. You can find me at alexisannbooks.com. I have Tempt is out right now. Burn is up for pre-order for only 99 cents if you pre-order it. So I suggest you do that. And then at the end of the month, on January 26th, I am launching my new name, Alexis Sykes, with my new series, D909, which is an action-adventure about an archaeologist and terrorists and bad guys, and the good guys win, and it's lighthearted and fun. And Mary Chris compared it to the Goonies, which made my day.
It's like adult Goonies. I'm going to clean that quote up for you, by the way, and I'll send it to you. No, it's awesome. You guys should be really excited about this.
So that's all we have tonight. You can find First Draft back here on the first Tuesday of February, I'm assuming, because that's when we do our show. I don't know what it'll be about. In the meantime, you can check out the podcast of this show or any other show on iTunes or SoundCloud, or you can check out our website for any other details at firstdraftwriting.com. Thank you guys very much for joining us tonight. And thank you, Laura, for joining us. Please check out her website and sign up for her classes.
My little sister gave me a testimonial, which I can't use on the internet, but I can say it here. Because I was like, well, can you give me a quote? Can I use something? She goes, she texted back, I went from oh to yes.
That's awesome.
That's not gonna get me like the Upper East Side clients I'm looking for, but I think it's my favorite testimonial. It's really good.
The favorite ones are like the hardest ones to use.
But thank you for having me. You guys are awesome. I buy all your books, so everybody else should too, because reading grows your brain, and there's a lot of dumber people, and we need bigger brains. So our patriotic duty as Americans to get big brains and buy books written by women, and I am alive. So good night.
I'm totally taking that quote and putting it on my website.
Yes.
Good night, everyone. First Draft out.
Thank you.